time is it? What time is it? What time is it?
Hi fans, Keven Casey here, and this is Talking About Sports, the Carolina Zone. It's your podcast where we talk about sports. Let me introduce our all-star panel here. From the NFL, Reggie Walker.
Flip mode's the greatest.
Flip mode. All right, bust a bus.
Bust the rhymes up in the place.
Split star.
The voice of Winthrop Athletics, Charlotte Knights broadcaster, and Carolina Panthers postgame show co-host, Mike Pacheco, and our stats guru, John Tobias, JT. Gentlemen, welcome. Busy day here in sports, the sports world, or at least the Charlotte sports world, rocked by the sudden acquisition of Dwight Howard by the Charlotte Hornets. Reds, let's start with you. What do you think of Superman? Well, let's say a taller Superman, but maybe an older Superman coming to the Queen City.
Well, I'm gonna go with his latter nickname and go with Dwightmare. Makes his way to Charlotte. But I think this is actually, when you look at the totality of the trade, I think this is actually a good trade for the Hornets. They shed a year off of a not great contract in Plumlee. They move up 10 spots in the draft. So and it's a guy that they sort of need. They need a big presence around the rim that people are somewhat deterred by. We don't know what Dwight Howard's going to be at this point in his career, but the guy did put up a double-double last year. So I think it's actually a good trade.
He's one of 6 centers in NBA history to have average a double-double in their first 13 seasons, and he's up with the names of Moses Malone and Will Chamberlain.
Well, does that mean
Bill
he's
Russell.
old if he's putting that up for 13 years?
Well, no, but it shows a consistency. I mean, to do a double-double every year. Now, granted, the last couple of years, I think health has been an issue as to whether he hasn't played 82 full games. Last year it was 74 games with the Atlanta Hawks, and you are getting a guy on the downside of his career. But when you look at Steve Clifford's system, he's a guy that likes the pick and roll game, which we know Dwight Howard can do that, and they want a rim protector at the back of that defense, and he can do that. So I think this is also a signal that the Hornets really feel like they have a window right now to try and get something done.
I co-sign pretty much with what you and Reggie said, to where even though he's not quite Dwight Howard like he was in 2008, 2009, and 2010, he's still a very effective player. He averaged 13 points, 12 rebounds last year. The 13 points alone is more than what the two guys the Hornets traded for in Plumlee and Marco. And the thing about it is that his contract actually ends in 2 more years. It's not very cap-friendly right now, but in 2 more years it comes off the books. So I definitely think it's a win-win situation. And also to add with what Reggie said is that in terms of the lottery pick, the Hornets still keep the lottery pick, so that part does not change at all.
And Reggie, I think one thing you'll probably agree with too is a lot of times coaches, especially when they've had players in the past, they feel like they can reclaim them. They feel like they can rehabilitate them. They feel like they can get them back to, maybe not to where they were, but to where they can be productive in the system. And Clifford has that experience. He was an assistant with the Magic when in all those great years that he had there.
Well, it's one of those things where, and I think a lot of times people get lost in this because we always talk about, right, the development of a player. But when you have a guy that you had early in his career and you get him back, you know what his foundation is. You know what he does really, really well. You know what he's very comfortable with. So at this point, it's about getting him to channel back to those days and understand his limitations. Don't try to be more than he is. And if he can master that skill again and be a finisher around the rim, knock down a jump hook or two throughout the game, and defend the rim and grab and get the ball off the glass and get it to Kemba and let those guys run, I think it helps this basketball team.
I just want to thank our fine host here at the Dilworth Family Grill. We have some excellent food here that we'll hopefully can get some later. It's,
I like those nachos.
We found out in our pilot edition
good
here that and the soft pretzels, everything's good here, and it's a great atmosphere. Come on down anytime to the Dilworth Family Grill. Now, Rich Cho, the general manager of the Hornets, somewhat maligned in some quarters. Some people said that when he made the trade for Plumlee, he got the wrong one, didn't know the difference. Now, I think it was a good trade for Charlotte. They move up a significant number in the second round, a quality high round second pick, a non-guaranteed contract. Maybe you stash this in Europe. Maybe use this, Reggie, you were saying, as a future asset. Maybe move up. A name that everyone is talking about is Kristaps Porzingis of the Knicks. I think it'll take a lot of capital and a lot of real estate to move that into that neighborhood. But even if you keep Dwight Howard, I think he's the good, like Mike pointed out, a good pick and roll, pick and pop guy. Kemba Walker's strength. I didn't see much improvement from Frank the Tank Kaminsky, although I do think he's a quality ball player, but maybe he could be part of the future.
Well, I think sometimes we lose track of who guys are and what they are, right? And we'll get into this later, the concept of a finished product versus a project. Frank Kaminsky, when they got him, a lot of people were saying, well, if he developed. Frank Kaminsky was in college a long time. That is not a developmental player. That is a finished product. So what Frank is right now is what Frank's going to be for the next 10 years. He's going to be a 20 to 25 minute a game guy at most. He's going to be a bench player. He's going to be able to step out and knock down shots. He's going to give you 6 or 7 rebounds. That's what Frank is, and there's nothing wrong with that. So getting back to your point,
someone
Kev,
told me once, Frank the Tank was the modern-day Brad Lowhouse. 7 feet tall, sits on the perimeter and shoots 3 points. Maybe 10 minutes a half.
I'll give him a little more credit than that, but I think I think if people, that's the biggest issue, is people need to understand sometimes guys are just who they are. Right. And like I said, that kind of concept is lost on a lot of people. And right now, what you need to do when you're trying to build a franchise, you can't always chase the potential superstar. Yeah. Sometimes you got to go get guys that fit and have a particular role. You put them in the role, and that's what they are. Listen, one of the guys that took forever to figure that out about himself was Jamal Crawford. Yeah. Now we all love him because he's a chuck and duck guy off the bench, which is fine because that's what he is. Let him be that guy.
Well, to add to your point, Reggie, when you look at a guy like Frank Kaminsky, certainly had a better second half than he had a first half of the year. And we saw, to use the football, we're almost in football season, he flashed a couple times in the second half of the season. But to add on to what you said, there's also that point where, he is. We know who he is, but he still has opportunity to grow within that role.
Agreed.
And so I think there's still, I'm not as down on Frank Kaminsky as I think Kevin is. But I do think he certainly is a role player, and
I'm not down on Frank. I like Frank the Tank. Drinks a lot of tea.
Because of that, you
drinks a lot of tea. I'm just saying other people are saying that. I'm not saying I agree or don't agree with it, but the minutes, like Reggie's saying, the minutes are speaking for himself. He didn't get many starts. So, you drafted this guy over.
But there's still an adjustment period to go in, even though he had all that time in college.
I liked Winslow out of Duke at that spot last year, or whenever he came out. I think that was a guy who was closer to a finished product than Frank the Tank.
I guess the one thing, though, that I think that a lot of people need to realize is that I noticed a theme to where Brad Lowhouse, role players, Frank Kaminsky was a lottery pick. And I think that when teams draft lottery picks, they don't envision them to be like a role player. They envision them to be not just a starter, but an effective starter as well. And up until this point, he has not demonstrated that, on a consistent basis.
Well, and that's where that concept of drafting the, quote, best available is the mistake there, because when people say, well, we took the best available player, and one could argue that he was or wasn't with the Justice Winslow concept.
I would argue he wasn't the best
fair.
available. And I am an advocate of the best available player.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But my point with that is you also have to understand the best available player may not be a superstar or may not ever become one. Right. And so sometimes you have to ask yourself, do I draft a role or do I draft best available? And as a GM, and as an ownership of a franchise, listen, I'll say this till I'm blue in the face. We just saw, the process in Philadelphia. Okay, so what were they getting to? Okay, so now they may pick up Fultz. They're probably going to draft Fultz this year. Embiid still only played 31 games, and Ben Simmons hasn't played a game yet. Yeah. So what happens in 2 years if we realize none of these guys can finish an 82-game season and be effective for 82 games? Then what did they do? Nothing.
Well, I think the other thing we've learned, too, over the past 20 or 30 years, guys like KD, LeBron, Steph Curry, these are guys that don't come around every year.
No.
And not every 2 or 3 years. And to put that collection of talent together, sometimes I think the expectations of lottery picks is maybe too high, is people over-expect what they can deliver. And it's not the player's fault. It's just the expectations that we put on them because they're a first, second, third pick overall in the draft. And it's hard to live up to that.
And they're usually under 20 years old.
Right.
Which, as we all know, a 20-year-old kid is generally not the most consistent person you're going to get at anything.
And that's why I think the interesting thing about the whole getting Dwight Howard is that a lot of times you will, as a coach, you will maybe put a little bit more stock in a veteran player that you know of than maybe roll the dice with a guy who, yes, has a ton of potential, but you don't know really what you have in that player. You're still kind of limited in how you evaluate these players. There's a lot of metrics, everything now, but until you actually get your hands on the player and see the player day in and day out, it's sometimes it doesn't match up. What you see coming in isn't what you thought you bought.
Right.
Well, Mike, what I was going to say is you've covered a lot of sports as a reporter and has called games in many different sports as an analyst. At what point do you try to merge your roster to your scheme? Like, oh, well, he doesn't fit our scheme. Well, maybe change your scheme, or maybe let's get into a different system. Steve Clifford has a system. He has familiarity with Dwight Howard. Maybe Golden State with Steve Kerr, a former San Antonio Greg Popovich disciple. He changed his scheme to fit the roster he had. That's why they're the champs. And who's going to take the next step to be the next champs?
Well, and sometimes it's not mutually exclusive. Like everything's not in a vacuum. I remember one time having a conversation with Coach K, and I asked him, when you go out and recruit, do you recruit guys to fit what you want to do, or do you just go out and get the best players? And he said to me, no, I get the best talent, and then I figure out a way how I can coach them to be the best they can be.
Best talent available.
So he's not.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I didn't know he recruited. I just thought he posted job openings and said, who wants this? And then let me just choose between the best guy.
As we stare down the NBA draft, the one thing I say every year, I don't say this at the NFL draft often, but I say it every year in the NBA draft. Potential has gotten a lot of guys fired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Potential, people, if you can't hear anything else I'm telling you, potential will get you fired if you're wrong. Don't be wrong.
It's the same in baseball. Look at the baseball draft. I mean, how many guys are in the first round that guys think are going to be the guy to rescue the franchise, and then maybe never ever even see a day in the big leagues.
Right. Now baseball guys get bailed out because they picked that, what was it, somewhere in the 20s or 30th round draft pick. You get a guy like Mike Piazza. He becomes the face of the franchise.
Yeah.
Everyone goes, who was the first round pick? Who cares?
That's right.
So in baseball, it's a little bit different, but that's a point that's very important. Yeah. There are only two, generally speaking, without trades and everything, you get 2 draft picks a year in the NBA.
Yeah.
JT, who picks up the next? Who's going to do well in this draft? Who can parlay this draft and maybe some acquisitions to become the next champs beyond Golden State? And we're not saying that Golden State's not going to win next year, but who could win next year? Is it Golden State, or if not, who?
The thing about it is that right now, I really don't see anyone beating Golden State right now. I think that the people that can make noise in the draft, like let's say Boston, let's say Philadelphia, I definitely think that they can make strides to the point to where they can dethrone Golden State. I just don't really see it. But the thing about it is you have to keep in mind is that when you talk about teams that can move up and teams that can actually have an impact, with Boston, they have several first-round picks. When will it become to the point to where they're going to start flipping those picks?
Well, they were the Eastern Conference runner-up, so they got assets. They could move with this draft, maybe make some bold moves, maybe expend some of that capital, maybe move up and leapfrog Cleveland, get into the final.
Well, this is true, but the thing about it is that we're still waiting on that. They haven't done anything in the past several years in terms of like acquire, give up the draft picks and get like a high price, NBA player.
Well, I think Boston at this point is at the point to where he's stockpiling this because he's going to end up doing something in free agency, and then he'll start unloading picks.
Super team era is that we seem to have seen that with Golden State. LeBron said that he didn't start it with Miami with he and Chris Bosh, and maybe he referenced the Lakers with Gary Payton and Karl Malone. Now, is this the super team era? And if Boston does say this isn't super team, maybe they expend, they have cap room, maybe they get a Gordon Hayward and a couple of draft picks, maybe even beyond that, maybe get a Kristaps Porzingis or someone else.
Let me qualify what LeBron said because it makes absolutely zero sense. There is no way he can compare that Lakers team with Gary Payton and those guys or the Rockets team with Clyde Drexler and those guys to what he did in Miami. What he did in Miami was a bunch of guys in their prime. What happened with the Lakers and the Rockets were a bunch of guys, with all due respect to Charles Barkley and Clyde Drexler, that were pretty much over the hill at that point and done. So LeBron, stop it. Just stop it.
The over-the-hill gang worked for the Redskins. I'll just say that.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right.
But it also depends on what's your definition of a super team. I mean, you could look back at some of the Celtics teams in the 60s with Bill Russell and all the talent that those guys had. Now, I think the delineation is in the modern era, they didn't have to worry about, Red Auerbach didn't have to really worry about free agency.
Right.
And now we're talking about in the super team era, players actually kind of being part of the change agent and actually being part of the recruiting process.
Players have all the control. I mean, if you look at Paul George right now, everybody's speaking of super teams, Paul George is sort of basically saying, a year early, I'm going to LA no matter what.
Right.
I'm going to get myself to LA.
Right.
So he's basically putting everybody else on alert that may be free agents around that same time. Hey, the next spot is Lakerland.
Yeah.
Period.
I'm going to come to the Kings' defense. I don't think that he started the super team. And the thing about it is that I think the difference between a super team and, let's say, a big three is because of that. Really, the big three more or less started, in my opinion, was Boston with Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce.
Agreed.
That was several years, of course, before Miami Heat came with Bosh, D-Wade and himself. I think the thing that differentiates is the super team. Now you have like four, fairly elite players. Your Draymond, Klay Thompson, Steph, and KD. And speaking of KD, what he did is just incredible. Just to put into perspective, he averaged in just 2 games more points than Harrison Barnes did the entire 7-game series the year before. So
and Harrison Barnes got a max contract. I'm gonna leave y'all with that.
Well, but here's something I wanted to bring up real quickly. It's something someone said last week, but I think it's interesting when it comes to Kevin Durant, because I think he was in the shadow, even though he was in a different conference of LeBron, but he had tougher competition to face. He had to face Golden State when he was with OKC. He also had to worry about San Antonio. But if 3-4 years ago he goes to Boston, I think now you see, maybe Boston, or it could be any team, frankly.
Well,
but I think the fact that he came out of a tougher division, if he was in the Eastern Conference and it was just his team against LeBron's team, I think the battle between those two would be a little bit more interesting, in the sense that I still think, you can't make the argument that LeBron's not the best player right now. I mean,
he's the best player in the world.
He's the best player in the world. But I think time might tell if Kevin Durant can close that gap a little bit, depending on how long he's with Golden State.
Well, before we go to a break, down the line, what does Charlotte have to do to be a super team? They have Michael Jordan as an owner. They have the Jordan brand. Michael Jordan, I think, has a lot of money, and the team has some money. What can they do to get to that super team status as quick as possible?
I think they need to do. Sorry, Reg. Go ahead. I think they need to do 2 things. It's kind of twofold. I think one, with all due respect, I think they need to draft better. Since 2011, they have had 3 lottery picks, and the thing about it is that it's been Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, it's been Frank Kaminsky, it's been Cody Zeller. They're all solid players, but nowhere close to like all-stars. And then on top of that, you also have to reduce the salary cap as well. The salary cap is projected to be at $103 million. The Hornets are already there right now. And now with the addition of Dwight Howard, that's going to put them close to the luxury tax. So you have to make sure that you, 1, shed bad contracts, and 2, you have to draft better.
No, I completely agree. I think it's going to take a little bit of luck. I hate to say it. They're going to have to be in the right spot to draft that next generational type player. The guy that we've already identified doesn't come around every day. So it's a combination of drafting well, making good personnel decisions, and then being in the right place at the right time.
I think a lot of that is in there. I would say this, in addition to the drafting well piece, you got to be bold. You got to be willing to get those meetings with those types of players that you want. And as a fan base, we've got to appreciate the attempts to do that, even when they don't work. And then I think the second piece of it is, when you're bold, you have to trust it.
Yeah.
You have to trust it. And one of the things I would do, I'm not saying it makes them a super team, but right now, hey, I package 11 and 31 and a player and see if I can get Porzingis. The Knicks will never do it, but make the offer. Be bold.
All right. Hey, we're talking NBA now. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk basketball from the NBA draft perspective. This is Talking About Sports.
What time is it? What time is it? Game time!
Get ready for a new experience. We're talking about sports on ADSN.
This is kind of the nitty-gritty where they're doing all the dirty work and getting ready for the season.
So let's just put that out there to begin with.
With Keven Casey, Reggie Walker, Mike Pacheco, John Tobias. Tune in each week, and the Talking About Sports experience will blow you away.
I was wondering if a bowl of soup came with that hat that you were wearing.
I got some shorts though.
Welcome back to Talking About Sports. We're here at the Dilworth Grill here in, I would call this Uptown Charlotte. A great family venue, good food. We're glad that we're here, and also glad that Steph Curry is from here, and he is celebrating his second NBA championship with a super team, as we pointed out. How would you? Where would you put Steph Curry? He's getting ready to get paid very big dollars, so and has earned them. So where you put him in the pantheon of the NBA hierarchy?
I think he's one of the top probably 3 or 4 point guards in the league right now. I mean, guys can argue different things different ways. I'm sure people will put Kyrie Irving in that conversation. Some people still love Chris Paul, and they put him in that conversation. And I'm not going to sit here and try to argue a lot of those guys down, but I think Steph is probably one of the top 2 or 3 point guards in the league. One of the better, obviously probably the best pure shooter out of all of them. One of the better pure scorers, and from my opinion, an improved defender, which is something that I enjoy about his game right now.
Well, he won 2 MVPs, as Mike is probably going to point out.
And he's also a guy that just fits in well with what they want to do.
Yes.
With that mentality of how Golden State wants to play, he's a great fit. And you could put Kyrie Irving in that team, and they probably would still win. But they're a different dynamic with him in there.
Yes.
And that's not like you said. It's not ripping a guy for no reason. It's not an insult. It's not a bad thing. But it's just he's a good fit for what they want to do.
Steph silenced a lot of critics with this last playoff, and the reason why is because a lot of people said that he was not a big-time player in the NBA Finals. 2 years ago, he averaged 26 points a game, but yet Iguodala got the Finals MVP. Last year, he was clearly outplayed by Kyrie Irving, averaged 22. This year, he averaged 27, 8, and 9.
But last year, I wouldn't say he was 100% healthy in the Finals last year.
Oh, by the way, he still didn't get the Finals MVP this year either.
And that says a lot about KD, right?
Which is a message. I mean, listen, that means this guy does what listen, it's one thing to be the guy, it's one thing to be a winner. And what this tells you is when the lights are the brightest in the NBA Finals, Steph figures out how to win instead of worrying about his numbers.
It'd be the interesting thing if you took the Warriors and you match them up, take any 7 or 8 All-Stars and play against the Warriors in a 7-game series, who would win?
Let me tell you something. The thing I like about Golden State is even their backups, even the guys like the Ian Clarks, the Patrick McCalls, those guys come in and they play valuable minutes in close games in the playoffs. That tells you that Steve Kerr trusts those guys to be who they are, not try to do too much, just play their game. And that's huge.
What about as we transition from Steph Curry, who was not even the top player picked in his draft? I think he was around like 7 or so. Where are we going to look at the draft? Who were some of the top guys out of the North Carolina schools? And where anybody know where the NBA draft is being held?
Barclays Center.
Okay.
Yeah, Brooklyn.
Why is that?
Yeah. So 3 guys know, Kevin.
Okay, well, I'm glad. I'm asking the audience. I know you guys.
He already knew that was a test.
But did they just pay? They just paid the highest bid to get it? Can Charlotte host an NBA draft like they did when Tim Duncan went number overall to the San Antonio Spurs?
Listen, to me, this whole draft moving around thing, whatever. I mean, it doesn't. I don't see what anyone gets out of it. To me, you do it near the league office, wherever you can, and keep it moving. But all these leagues, they want to sell tickets to see people walk up to a stage and take a picture with a suit on.
Right.
If people want to buy that ticket, enjoy, but I'm not doing it.
Well, and it's also, and we're going to. I know we'll talk about this a little bit later about something else. I'll kind of leave that tease out there, but everything now is becoming a made-for-TV event.
Yes.
The draft continually has been that, and now it's an opportunity, like you said, to go from just making it the TV event to packaging it with social media, and now you're making it an event. So now, instead of just being a draft, in the back room with guys smoking cigars, picking guys, now it's worldwide, and it's a multimedia event.
I guess to piggyback to the original question in terms of how do we think that guys will do from the Carolinas, I think that they're going to do fairly well. I think it's potentially 5 guys that can be drafted in the lottery. You have the 3 guys from Duke. You have Luke Kennard, Jason Tatum, Harry Giles. You have Justin Jackson from Carolina. That's possible. And also you have Dennis Smith Jr.
Yep.
So I think that the Carolinas are representing themselves really, really well.
Who is the best guy coming out of the, Duke, North Carolina, Wake Forest, anybody?
Pro potential?
Oh, don't forget about John Collins. He could find himself.
Mike, does Winthrop have anybody in the draft?
Keon Johnson is a possibility. He might be a late second-round guy, maybe a non-drafted free agent.
Hey, listen, he can fill it up, though.
He can fill it up.
He can get after you defensively, get underneath you, and he can fill it up, okay? When I think about him, I know a lot of people may not know this name, but if you go back and look, Don't forget about my man from Oakland, Kay Felder, a couple of years ago. He puts the ball in the basket. This kid is very similar, reminds me of, not as explosive getting off the ground, but he reminds me a lot of that small guy that can put the ball in the basket.
And you know what? And Isaiah Thomas may be the guy that opens a door like that for a guy like Keon Johnson. Because Keon Johnson listed at about 5'7". He's right around 5'7". Might be 5'6".
They may actually be telling the truth with his height.
But Keon Johnson's a guy that, for people that haven't followed Winthrop a lot, I mean, he was a big part of their success. He had 4 great years there. They went to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2007, which was when they beat Notre Dame in Greg Marshall's last year. But Keon Johnson's a guy, he might be an interesting guy to keep an eye on. May not be he probably won't get drafted, but might be a guy that makes a summer league roster and maybe has a chance to open some eyes.
My guy to watch is Jaquan Lewis of VCU. There's a guy who reminds me of Chauncey Billups, a calm guy, kind of a big 6'3" point guard. I think he might be a second-round pick. I think he's definitely going to play professional basketball, whether that be in the D League or an overseas league. I think he has a very good chance if he gets in the right system.
He can lock you down, too. He comes from that Havoc system.
After you on defense.
Absolutely.
He's the head of the snake in that Havoc. And he's fearless going to the basket. I saw him take a bump earlier this year. Nasty landing. Came back a couple games later and played well. So the kid will go get it.
Who is the first guy that comes off the board, and if you can, barring trades as we sit here, that maybe he's going to come out of say the Duke, North Carolina?
I think it's got to be Jason Tatum. I think he makes so much sense for the Boston Celtics at 3. I know a lot of people are saying Josh Jackson. I get it. But to me, he is a wing scorer at 6'8", 6'9", that can guard 3 or 4 positions. He can take it off the rim for you and lead the break, so you don't put as much on Isaiah Thomas. You've already got guys on the wing at the 2-guard spot in Avery Bradley and Marcus Smart. So right now, to me, he makes the most sense because he can play the 3 spot, start for you. And then if you want to, you can play him with Jay Crowder, and he could slide to the 4 and get away with some minutes there if you want to play small ball. So I like him there better than I like Josh Jackson from Kansas. And I'm going to tell you something, I love Josh Jackson.
Yeah, and that's one of those picks where, Reggie, I don't know if you could go wrong with either one of those guys if you're Boston, but maybe the bigger question is Boston going to be there at number 3?
That's a good point.
Do they trade down? And so that becomes interesting. But either one of those guys, Boston is going to need some scoring out on the perimeter. They're going to need some help inside. So I think that's the direction they're looking at in the number 3 spot.
Speaking of Boston, you guys are going to laugh at this, and I know this is your world, but I'm going to step in it for a minute. Danny Ainge, since he's been running things in Boston, he has never drafted a guy to the Celtics that became an all-star in a Celtic uniform. Never.
And maybe Jason Tatum may be that guy. But you know what, to your point,
they're talking about maybe signing Gordon Hayward.
Right. And to Reggie's point, even if they do not draft Jason Tatum, they go to Josh Jackson route, he won't get past Phoenix. Phoenix, they have like an abundance of guards. They have Eric Bledsoe, Brandon Knight, Devin Booker. They definitely need someone like a good, solid wing player that can definitely fill it up.
There's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of moving pieces behind the scenes on the draft. You don't know all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, we have a trade. Or it's coming out that maybe they don't draft Jason Tatum of the Celtics because they've already got some word or agreement in principle behind the scenes with Gordon Hayward.
Agreed.
So maybe there's going to be information that's going to come out after the draft, or maybe there's going to be some wheeling and dealing during the draft.
Fair.
We are drafting someone for another team contingent on a trade.
I just think the Tatum-Jackson thing, those are 2 interchangeable parts. I think those 2 guys are 3 and 4, depending on which team takes who.
The one thing that I do want to say, and I'm not going to say you heard it here first, but Jason Tatum may be the first player picked out of North Carolina. But I honestly think, when healthy, talent-wise, that Harry Giles
I agree.
is the most talented of that bunch. He is the best high school player in person that I have ever seen.
Wow. Could a Harry Giles fall to Charlotte at number 11?
I think so.
I think it's highly possible, but the question is, if you have Dwight Howard, Frank Kaminsky, and you have Cody Zeller, is that the best case, situation for him to go as opposed to like a 3? But in terms of when he's healthy, he is a flat-out monster.
If he's healthy, he can play the 3 spot in the NBA, to me. I think if he's healthy and his knees are back to, well, I shouldn't say back, because anytime you tear up your knee, it's not going to be back. Right. But if he can have a resurgence from the knee injuries, because a lot of people forget, Dennis Smith tore his knee up.
Yes.
And we saw what he became. So if this kid, Harry Giles, can recover to the level that Dennis Smith did with his own injury, he can play the 3 spot and be a very effective player in the NBA.
Absolutely, 100%.
Mike, what about somebody like Justin Jackson, Luke Kennard, who Charlotte worked out over last weekend? What about, where do these guys, is Charlotte at 11 too early for Justin Jackson or maybe even a Luke Kennard?
Can you ever discount a North Carolina playing being drafted by the Charlotte Hornets?
Nope. I will discount Duke players being drafted by the Charlotte Hornets.
Gerald Henderson.
Discount that.
That's possible. No, I mean, I think Jackson, Giles, Collins, we talked earlier about Kennard, those guys are probably in that 11 to 20 range. And still, those are good. I mean, those are still positions where they're, depending on the right team, they're going to be able to come in and step in right away and be able to make a big impact. So those guys will definitely be, potential impact players. We talked about this a little bit off the air, though. I mean, there are some things that could happen. A foreign player getting drafted a little bit earlier.
That could mess everything.
I don't have but like one foreign guy, and I can't pronounce his name. Laurie Markkanen.
The Arizona.
That's a big guy from Arizona.
Right.
Now, he's Finnish kid. He can play.
He's a good player.
But the one everybody's talking about is the guard out of France.
Frank
Yes.
Ntilikina.
Yeah,
the point guard from Stan Mikita. I love that. Or Nikita Koloff, my good friend.
That's old school NWA.
I know. I believe me, I've taken the sickle many a time, too many times. I got a bad neck for it. We have a graphic here where we can show, but I think we're pretty similar on, Reggie, especially you and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That kind of worries me about our top 11 picks, 10, 11 picks of the draft. And I think we're all in agreement. Markelle Fultz going to Philadelphia. He's the number 1 guy, followed by Lonzo Ball. And then that's kind of where we differ. Reg, you and I like Jason Tatum. Mike, you and JT like Josh Jackson.
And that's what we talked about. I think those 2 guys, it just depends on what Boston wants to do. Apparently Boston likes Josh Jackson. Apparently Jackson would not work out for them unless they assured him that they were going to pick him, which Danny Ainge doesn't care. He'll pick who he wants. But if Josh Jackson's had enough things go on around him, Boston may say, you know what, we're going to take Tatum because he's less of a headache off the basketball floor, at which point Phoenix is going to take Josh Jackson.
Well, and, you can't go wrong with a guy like Tatum in that spot anyway, first, especially for Boston. He's going to come in, maybe not as polished as, you would have liked, but a guy that, look, Brad Stevens is a fantastic coach.
Tremendous.
And, so I think whoever they get in that spot, he's going to be able to coach them up and they'll be fine.
If they don't pick a small forward there, that means they're casting their entire lot on getting Gordon Hayward to come to Boston. I'll just say that right now. I don't know if that's what they're doing, but if they don't pick one of those guys at that small forward spot, that is their plan.
But what about why? I mean, the league has kind of made this second max player available to kind of help the home team, the current team, retain a lot of the free agents, help Orlando, Oklahoma City, Utah keep some guys, whereas you're going to give up, if you're, say, Gordon Hayward's $50 million to jump teams or you keep the extra money and stay where you are.
Well, I'll say it like this. To me, you're never leaving money on the table if you never had it. Yeah. So until he signs it, he's not leaving it because he never had it. But I get your point. If there's a chance to guarantee yourself $50 million,
you ever heard of that show?
I think I'm taking the additional $50 million.
You ever heard of that show with what is it? The wives of the NBA. You better get the wives. You better get that money.
You better get that 50.
That's all I'm saying. Okay.
That's fair.
And speaking of which, there's been a lot of discussion about the age of NBA players. Guys used to be able to, where I came from, Moses Malone came right out of high school. Petersburg High, the Crimson Wave. And, you had guys like Bill Willoughby, Daryl Dawkins. They came right out of high school. I'm going way back, but recently, like Kevin Durant.
Dr. Duncan
Not Kevin Durant, but, Kevin Garnett. But, yeah, I mean, Garnett. LeBron. So
Kobe
is
Bryant.
18. If you graduate high school, can you go straight to the pros? Bryce Harper in baseball graduated high school a year early, got a GED, and went to some JUCO.
Bombs in Vegas.
Okay, but seriously, what about? Can a guy, if he's good enough, get there, or are they protecting the teams protecting themselves from guys who are future busts in the league, or do you have to go to Europe? Do you have to go to, or is there like in the NFL, 3 years, 2 years, 20, 21 years old? You got to be able to vote?
I don't think they're protecting anything. I think actually in a lot of ways, because of the way college basketball is with these guys, they just let these guys come in and give them the ball and let them do whatever they want. So I think they're actually protecting themselves even less because they look at him and they think, oh, he just put up 20 on his college team. That'll translate. Well, it's a different world in the NBA. What I think they should do I say let them come out of high school, but this is what I would do. I would raise the age limit in the D League to 20, and then say if you come out of high school and you are not on an active, not one of the three guys sitting at the end of the bench in a suit, you need to be an active player on an NBA team when the season starts, or there isn't.
But can the D League be a factor, saying, okay, we're going to draft you, but we're going to stash you on the D League for a year or two because we think you have a tremendous amount of upside?
The NBA won't put enough into their minor league. I guess my point in saying this is, if they want to come out early, let them come out early. But we have to stop giving everybody this humongous cushion, this easy landing spot, this golden parachute. Make them learn how to make an educated decision. Talk to the right people and figure out if they're ready. And if they're not, the consequence is they got to go somewhere else, not the NBA or not the D League.
Mike, I think the key is non-guaranteed contracts like the NFL. You start not guaranteeing those contracts, I think maybe a lot of guys may want to think about going pro.
Well, there are a lot of issues going on here, and to what Reggie's talking about, it's life's not fair. So the cream of the crop will rise. Now, the issue that a lot of the teams are having, and I talked to a scout actually about this not too long ago, the NBA teams would rather get the kids at 18 because, coaches being the way coaches are, they want to be able to put in the systems that they want to put into. They want to do the skill development with those players and not trust it on somebody else. So that's why I think sometimes you would say, well, why doesn't the NBA want these guys to go 3 years or 4 years of college? And I think part of that's because they might feel like a kid might get screwed up going to a college, whereas if they had him for those 3 or 4 years, that player might be further along at 21 in the program for 3 or 4 years than coming in from a college.
I think that the process right now is a little archaic and antiquated. I think that if they do have it to where, if they're going to change it, have it to where a person can go out of high school. And like you said, life isn't fair because if they go out of high school and let's say they're a bust, I mean, who's to say that they cannot, go back to school and earn their degree? It's not like, once when you become a bust, you cannot go back to college. You can always do that.
You just can't play.
Yeah. You just can't ball.
But
the second thing, real quick, the second thing is that if they choose to stay in school, I say let it be 2 years. I think it would help the college game, and I definitely think it would help the NBA game because there was a point, especially when we were younger, to where we would get used to like college teams in terms, okay, this person's coming back their sophomore year, their junior year. Now you don't really get used to any team now because all of the great college players are in the NBA. I respect that and I don't hate on them for doing that, but I do think that it hurts the product, and I definitely think that it hurts the product with the NBA, but much more so with college basketball.
Because I'll ask this question too, and I often ask this question of people because people say, what about a guy being able to develop under an NBA coach? Well, let me ask you this question, and I'll use Andrew Wiggins as the best example lately. Is he better developing by taking a bunch of shots on a bad team in Minnesota, or is he better developing playing on the opposite wing of LeBron James and watching how that guy masters the game for 3 years? Which one is better for his development? If you're on a bad team jacking up shots, are you really developing, or are you just putting up numbers? Yeah. Trust me, I can tell you, I played on a lot of teams in my life. I've been on a bad team putting up numbers, and I've been on a really good team with not as good numbers. I'm going to tell you right now, maybe it's just me, but Markelle Fultz was 9-22 last year. You think he enjoyed that? I hope he didn't, because if he did, that is a definite reason to not take him number one. I want guys that want to win, and I want guys to understand the game. And to me, you have to ask the question of development and how you're saying develop these guys.
Well, the hardest thing, too, I think, is, and some of this is on, unfortunately, the young 17, 18-year-old young man, because is he going to have the wherewithal to know what is best for him? Because we talked about, what I was talking about was from the NBA perspective. Some NBA teams feel like they would rather develop these guys. I think we probably would all somewhat agree on this. I don't think you can legislate 3 years in the NBA. It's just that the barn door's already open. But I think it would be better for everybody, because I think that college experience, having that 3 years to mature, take classes, if you really feel like you're going to be a lottery pick and make all that money, wouldn't it be good for you to take 2 or 3 years of financial classes and understand what that money's going to do for you down the road? Because we're not talking about the old days where you might go to school to have a trade. I mean, these guys are setting themselves up for life, and they can be taken advantage of very easily if they don't have that maybe maturity that maybe they get by staying in school for a couple years and that social experience. I mean, my 4 years of college are among the 4 best years of my life.
Absolutely.
My favorite 4.
And I don't know what
My favorite 7, by the way. But, hey, drunk and stupid is no way to go through life.
Man Casey over there.
Easy.
I'm just being real. That's all. I mean,
Nothing wrong with that.
I transferred, played sports. You know how it is, Reg. Although you were I was only as good as the person next to me.
Yeah, well, that's it.
So that's kind of how it is. While we're keeping an eye on Mike, is it bad karma, bad luck to point out a possible no-hitter in baseball before it's in the books?
This is my take on that. Because I have studied this, I've thought about this for a long time.
Called baseball for many years.
Yes, I've called baseball for many years. Been in sports for over 20 years. If by me saying a no-hitter is about to be thrown has that much weight, then I would be sitting on a beach in Tahiti right now because I would have won the Powerball like 6 times.
Yes.
It is funny, it is fun, and there are some times where you do say something, all of a sudden the announcer jinx plays out. But I just think it's the coincidence, the normal part of a game, especially the later you get into a game. I mean, if you get into the 7th inning and you start talking about a no-hitter, a guy's arm could be dragging, he could be tipping his pitches a little bit. I mean, there's so many things that have to go right in a no-hitter. And for the announcers to mention it or not mention it to be a factor, I think is silly.
Well, Mike, I wonder if our mutual friend Dave Jagler is mentioning that with Max Scherzer and the Washington Nationals, who right now are in the 8th inning, and he is not allowed a hit so far. You think our buddy Jags has brought that up?
Well, I know this. There are some people that feel like it's bad form to talk about a no-hitter until like the 6th inning, just because the fact is, if a lot of guys can go 5 innings without a hit, it becomes more of a feat if you can do that between the 6th innings and the completion
You've
of a
done
no-hitter.
nothing until you went through the lineup twice.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't until you get through that lineup twice, I don't care.
Yeah.
So my question to you, Mike, since you're the baseball guru of the bunch, do you think that out of all of the sports, that baseball is the most superstitious out of all of the
Absolutely
sports?
it is.
Without question. Probably not even a close second.
Not even a close
They
second.
got too many unwritten rules too, man.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
The unwritten rules. I'll tell you, one of my favorite superstition stories was in the minor leagues. We were on in Canopus. We had a 7-game losing streak.
Oh boy.
And the manager said, I got to do something to change our luck. So we were in Ohio. So we had everybody turn around and walk off the bus backwards. We lost the game 7-2.
I'd rather just called Mark Grace and got a slump buster involved.
Yeah, pretty much. Be done with that.
What about, and our Mike and I used to work with Dave Jagler here in Charlotte Radio. Don't touch his water bottle or his headphones. That's the that was his superstition, one of them. What's your superstition? What'd you do when you're playing for Penn State?
Don't talk to me. That was my thing. It was when it's game day. When I wake up in the morning, I don't talk. I was the same way in high school. Don't talk to me. I'll never forget, I was a junior in high school, and a freshman walked up to me and started talking to me, and I just gave him a look, and then he tried it again, and he almost went out the bus window. Don't talk to me as I'm preparing for a game. That's my big one.
Not even our buddy E.Z. Smith IV from Concord?
Nope.
He didn't say nothing?
Z didn't say nothing to me, and you know what? I didn't say anything to Z either because I didn't want to make him mad either.
He's a big man.
Yes,
Still
sir.
is.
No, when at Merrimack, I would wear the same T-shirt under my pads game day, and I would put the pads in the the thigh pads I would put them in the same order.
Yes. I had that one too.
Yeah.
I was a little bit like that too.
Yeah.
With the shirt, I mean the shirt.
Yeah.
JT, what'd you do on all those chess tournaments you played in?
Nice.
Oh,
Like I'm Carlton or somebody from the Fresh Prince. I mean, what's up?
He fired that shot.
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah, I can't give you
Would you play
superstition
badminton? I mean, what
from a
was
college standpoint, but like, are we talking life superstitions?
it? Life, life, sports, whatever.
And I know that I drive my girlfriend crazy because I have a lot of weird superstitions, like at the house. One thing is that if I'm watching a game, of course, I'm a big Steeler fan. Even though I've been working in the media for a long time, that's the one team that I ride with. So if they're doing really, really well, and I'm like in a certain position, like on the couch, like I will not move.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
I know, right? Easy. Yeah, family show.
All right.
Family show. I will not move unless something bad happens, whether it's a turnover, interception, whatever have you. But that's my superstition.
I
stay in my lane.
When I was watching the VC Rams march to the Final Four in 2011, I had to sit in the same spot on the couch.
Smart.
I had to have the same shirt on.
Same shirt,
And
same
it
spot.
got us to the Final Four.
Hey, listen.
I had nothing to do with it. Jamie Skeen had a lot to do with it.
Hey, Jamie Skeen, good player.
All right.
Really good player. And JT, by the way, as a Steeler guy, very bad joke here, but I've often been told that I look like Mike Tomlin's little brother.
So
I'm gonna just leave
that
that right
means you
there.
look like Omar Epps too, right?
Pretty much. I've gotten them all.
I saw you on Juice before.
Well, not in Juice.
I got a reverse superstition, Kevin. I had a Patriots shirt that I wore twice, and they lost both times. One of them was in the Super Bowl, so that shirt.
You should wear that every day.
If Robert Kraft found out, he'd have flown you up to Foxborough, and he'd have gotten you anything you wanted. I'll guarantee it, because whatever they're doing in New England, they're doing it right.
Yes, sir.
All right, hey, this is great stuff. This is Talking About Sports live from the Dilworth Grill. We'll be right back.
We're talking about sports on
We're talking about sports at ADS. I don't know how to say that.
We're talking about
We're talking about sports in, oh God, I forgot.
ADSN.
What is it?
ADSN.
ADSN, okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about sports.
Talking about sports.
We're talking about sports.
Talking sports.
Talking about sports. We're talking about sports on ADSN.
Talking about sports on ADSN.
Welcome back to Talking About Sports. And guys, LeVar Ball is a guy that's a lightning rod, maybe bringing it on himself. He's got magical genes. Let's just say this, he and his wife. He's got his son Lonzo Ball, could be the second pick to the Lakers. He's got other sons that are in the pipeline from UCLA in high school. He's got this big baller brand that he's touting as his own, I guess, the next Under Armour, if you will. What comes to mind when you think of Ball?
Listen, the guy, I'll give him this.
LeVar
You can
Ball.
say what you want about LeVar Ball. He is a marketing genius. He gets attention at all times.
Is he the Don King of basketball?
He's close. And whether you like it or not, we're talking about it. And that's all he wants people to do is continue to talk about him, continue to talk about his sons, continue to because listen, he is single-handedly marketing this big baller brand and his sons into the biggest attention getters at the draft. Whether he's the best player or not is debatable. His son, I should say, Lonzo, is the best player or not is debatable. But what is very clear is he's the one we're talking about. And guess what? That's all Daddy's trying to do anyway. So,
but is that taking some pressure off Lonzo, or is it putting it on him?
I don't think it puts it on him, because I think the kids realize, other players, I mean when I say kids, other players realize, and Lonzo himself realizes, listen, that's just who my dad is, and he's always been that way. Yeah, some guys are going to go at him a little bit more, but the reality is LeVar's the one out there writing the checks. Lonzo's not worried about cashing checks that his dad's writing. That's not his problem.
No, and teams may, if they get into a situation where it's if they come down to two players and they are maybe at a coin flip, maybe his dad's antics, if you will, comes into play. But other than that, if they feel like Lonzo's the answer, Lonzo's the answer. I mean, and what dad does doesn't really matter. Now, you can look at it a couple other ways. I mean, great marketer, and he realizes, look, he's striking while the iron's hot, and he sees two other sons coming behind the first one. So it's a way for him to try and do the best he can for his family, not just his son, but the two sons behind him. And this is his moment in the spotlight, and he's taking advantage of it.
Without question, I think that Reggie pretty much nailed it. LeVar Ball moves the needle. I mean, that goes without saying.
You
and it
getting
kind
some
of
big
reminds
baller brands for your Y League? You going to get in some?
I wouldn't rock big baller brand right now. But you know what though? I really admire what he's doing though, because he's doing something that really no other person that we know of is doing. Like, he's really going up against these sneaker giants, your Adidas, your Under Armour, your Nike. So it takes courage to do that. So I commend him for that.
I wonder if he get with Stephen Marbury and lower the price a little bit.
Oh yeah. Well, there you go. Back
the problem there is, and that's a good point, and I've talked to a lot of people about this. I think the thing we have to forget and understand a little bit about the world of manufacturing something like that is, when you're only making them per order, as opposed to having 50,000 made at one time,
your
they're
cost
going
is
to
huge.
cost more because your cost is through the roof.
Steph has some friends in China that make them a little cheaper than
That's
maybe.
Yeah, but we're trying to bring jobs back to America.
Well,
No politics.
that's
going on.
another show. That's another show.
But there's really no gray area with LeVar. Either you like him or you don't like him. It kind of reminds me of a Floyd Mayweather quote.
Money
either
team.
you pay me, whether you pay to see me win or you pay to see me lose, you're still paying. And the same thing is for LeVar Ball. I'm a fan. I know that people may not like to hear that, but I admire him what he's doing, and I think that at the end of the day, his son is still going to have to produce, whether he is, whether he doesn't have the bravado that his dad has or not. He's still going to have to produce.
And let's call a spade a spade. When basketball season starts, he's not going to be the NBA's problem. He's going to be Steve Alford's problem, because Steve Alford's going to have to listen to him behind the bench for the middle son, who's going to be at UCLA this fall.
I like the guy. I think he's an entrepreneur. He's a Don King. He's Conor McGregor. He's Floyd Mayweather. He's brash. He's bringing it. What if these shoes start drawing? If you start seeing some A-list celebs starting to wear them, then maybe he gets a guy. Maybe some industrialist.
Maybe
he gets the guy Jeff Bezos from Amazon as a partner. Maybe he gets somebody from Apple. Maybe he gets Jay-Z. Maybe he gets some leading entrepreneur that maybe wants to get behind it and make it cool. Maybe that's how JT, as you say, moves the needle.
That's it.
Absolutely.
What about and I'll say this because we had another trade in the NBA this week, and it reminds me of with the Lakers and D'Angelo Russell. He kind of outed not outed in what some people might think. He kind of rolled on one of his buddies, Swaggy P, about
dimed him out.
He dimed him out, man. He kind of rolled on him in the locker room, and a lot of guys didn't take too kind to that.
Well, listen,
you've been in the locker room, Reg, with a guy like does that.
Yeah, you don't do that. You don't. That's something you just don't do in a locker room. You don't betray the trust of a locker room, no matter what it is. And I'm not going to get into it, but you see it across different sports. We've seen it in college baseball recently. You just don't go down that path.
Let me tell you something. In pro wrestling, that stuff happens
all the
every
time.
single. Tiger Woods had nothing on Ric Flair or any of those guys.
No.
And you didn't do that in the locker room, although sometimes it came on camera and it always changed.
Well, I'm going to show everybody how well-versed I am. I know about the Kurt Angle, Jeff Jarrett situation, so I'm locked into all of that.
Well, there's other more tragic situations, but this thing, he outed the guy, and that caused the heat in the Los Angeles Lakers locker room, and D'Angelo Russell is no longer in that locker room.
I didn't think that guy was the greatest of players anyway. I wasn't big on his upside. I got no issue with them moving him. I think it's a good trade for them, getting Brook Lopez, getting rid of the Mozgov contract. Yeah. I think that worked out well.
What about we touched on it briefly. Carolina showings at the NBA Combine. Now, who's going to shine outside of our top five? Mike mentioned the guy from Winthrop. What other guys from the Carolinas, plural, can maybe make an impact at the Combine? Maybe get late first, second round picks.
I'm going to tell on myself here for the audience because we're supposed to pay attention to all this stuff. I don't believe in combines, basketball or football. I don't care about a T-shirt All-American. I don't care what you do in a drill.
You don't follow the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, the pit?
I could not care any less. Put the tape on. As we all say in the world of football, the eye and the sky don't lie.
Well, and I think to add to that, because I couldn't agree more with what Reggie just said, Kevin, I think a lot of times, we've seen guys get the Workout Warrior Award. They're the guys. I remember Mike Mamula from BC way back in the day. He was the first-round pick of the Eagles, and he turned out not to be a very good pro. They do their talking from the beginning of their career to the end of their college career, whether it's a 3-year career, 1-year career, one and dones, whatever it is. Putting that tape together during games is what matters the most to me. What you do in a game. We're in a season right now where people are getting amped up about OTAs and mini camps in football, which I think is fantastic because it's growing the sport. But if you really take anything to heart about what's going on at an OTA, at a mini camp, or even in some of the combine stuff, I think you're inflating the value of that particular event.
One thing that I will say, just to put a bow on it, there are two guys that I think that no one's really talking about from the Carolinas that I think that will be productive, and they're both from South Carolina, Sindarius Thornwell and I think P.J. Dozier. Both of them are very good defenders, and there's always a premium for defenders in this league, and both of them are very gritty. Absolutely. So he kind of reminds me of Aaron Key, speaking of Philly, back in the day. Played at Temple, played for the 76ers with Iverson. So I definitely think that those guys can be productive and have a nice niche career in the NBA.
The one thing about the combines I think that is impactful is when they have the chance to be around the guys and maybe see how a guy warms up or talk to a guy in the one-on-one interviews. But as Dave Gettleman says, the underwear workouts, it's maybe part of the story, but it shouldn't be a deciding factor.
I'm not interested in T-shirt All-Americans, and I'll tell you this. I'll tell you a quick little story. I was at the draft combine in Chicago the year Damian Lillard was there. And I was talking to Fran Fraschilla, and Fran's like, this kid's a really good player. A lot of people are not high on him because he's a 4-year college player. Now, they were doing 5-on-5s. He came down the floor and dunked on 2 guys. Everybody in the gym turned around. All of a sudden, he became a top 10 pick, top 15 pick, whatever it was. I'm not saying it can't happen, but for the most part, no one cares what you do in those workouts.
Well, Kevin Durant said, I'm not good in running 40s and in a no shirt on. Give me the ball.
Give me the ball.
Play basketball.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
You play your sport. Listen, if that were the case, I know a whole lot of guys that should have been a number 1 pick in every draft. I know guys that have 40-plus inch verticals. I know guys that'll knock down 25 3-pointers in a row off a ball rack. Well, okay, maybe 18 out of 20. But you get my point.
Yeah.
You can run into guys that have all the physical tools. I've seen how many guys have we seen in NFL history run these crazy 40 times, James Jett, then you get them on the field and they can't catch a cold.
Yeah.
So you can't fall in love with a guy's workout that's, listen, put the tape on. As Warren Sapp once said, if you so tough, put a jersey on.
He almost cussed me out in the Tampa Bay locker room after a Carolina Panther
Mike Sherman
game. I don't want to get into that, but now I understand where he was coming from.
Yes, sir.
Now, I didn't then, but I do now. Let's wrap up this segment. New NBA season award release strategy. What are we to think about this?
I think it's horrible. I think the timing is atrocious. If you're going to take a month, I'm hyperbolizing there, but if you're going to take all that time between conference finals to the finals, do it in that time frame. Do it in that window, because the rest, unless a guy's in the finals, they're not doing anything anyway. So to do it 2 weeks, 3 weeks after the season ends, you're doing it the week after the draft. Hey, listen, if you want to be smart, maybe you do it the night before the draft in the same city that the draft is, and you win 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
You take that over. That could work, but to do it randomly on a Monday after the draft is pointless.
Yeah, and this is more what we talked about earlier in the show, which was the made-for-TV event, or the event to sell tickets, the event to dominate social media. I guess I'm lukewarm. I mean, I'm not really pro or against it. It's just a meh for me. It's just okay. You're just doing it. It's not affecting my life in any way. It's a change in departure, and hey, if it generates revenue and it generates ratings, good for them.
I think that what they're trying to do is, I think that they're trying to adopt a philosophy from the NFL. They want you to keep on talking about that particular sport. Baseball, they wait until a while after the season ends before they announce.
And they would drip it out too. They would do the MVPs on each league, and then they do the Cy Young. And
so I don't think that this is any different. So I really don't have an issue with them doing that.
It is an interesting strategy, though, right? Because you're kind of lumping it all in one night, trying to get the big attention bang, if you will.
Yes.
Whereas in the past, you would try to maybe not dominate the cycle, Reggie, but you would at least maybe get 2, 3, 4 days in that cycle. Whereas this will be one day, and then people will move on.
Absolutely.
Who wins?
I'll just make this my point. I think when you look at the MVP race, you look at the numbers that Harden and Westbrook put up this year. Kawhi Leonard had a great year as well. Here's what I always say when it comes to
the best player doesn't always win the MVP.
Well, to me, with awards, I think it has to start with the expectation. And what I mean by that is, we expected Kawhi to have a year similar to what he had. We didn't expect James Harden to average that many assists. No one expected Russell Westbrook to go for a triple-double. So to me, your winner is Russell Westbrook. When it comes to Coach of the Year, we expected Spoelstra to not be great but have a solid year. We expected Pop to be one of the top coaches, have a lot of the, be near the top of the Western Conference. We didn't expect that from Mike D'Antoni. So I think, to me, when you look at those kinds of things, those are the types of things, to me, that decipher those awards. Whether you look at the Defensive Player of the Year award, we know Kawhi can defend. We know Draymond can defend. We didn't know Rudy Gobert was that good. So I think sometimes the expectation is the most dangerous thing. But I think at the same time, the expectation is what can differentiate, my opinion, who wins those awards.
Yeah, I say Russell Westbrook, and from the standpoint of the triple-doubles, all the numbers he put up, but to do it without having Kevin Durant by his side and kind of being not a one-man show, but I mean, he was kind of the guy there. And without them, I don't think there's any chance Oklahoma City makes the playoffs.
And most people didn't think they would make the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to keep it simple. LeBron James is the best player in the league. Russell Westbrook had the best season. Russell Westbrook is your MVP. But I will say this, though. If we look at the Rookie of the Year, Reg, you made a good point how you said that the P word potential can get you fired.
Yep.
If you look at the Rookie of the Year, there is a good chance the person that's going to win the Rookie of the Year is a guy that's technically not even really a rookie, and we're talking about Joel Embiid.
There's no way he should be even in the conversation.
And the thing about it is that this could be like a referendum on, like I said, on what you said about the P word. There are no lottery picks that were in this last year's draft that will be the Rookie of the Year, or that's even in the running. Malcolm Brogdon was not a lottery pick.
No.
You know, Sarek was in the draft a couple of years ago.
And Embiid only played 31 games.
Yeah. Exactly. He can hoop, though.
An absolute joke.
He can hoop, though.
There's no way you can be in your third year in the league, only play 31 games, and win the Rookie of the Year, and me respect that award.
Couple of quick points before we go to break. Malcolm Brogdon definitely had the best season of any rookie, and the best player on earth right now is Kawhi Leonard. That's just it. And who expected James Harden to even pass the ball even once a game?
Most people didn't.
And Max Scherzer, by the way, has lost his no-hitter in the 8th inning. So Mike Pacheco's announcer jinx has worked again. So there you go.
Glad to help.
As we come back, we're here at the Dilworth Grill. This is Talking About Sports. We're coming back with much more right here on Talking About Sports.
We're talking about sports on
We're talking about sports at ADS. I don't know how to say that.
We're talking about
sports in, oh God, I forgot.
ADSN.
What is it?
ADSN.
ADSN, okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about sports.
Talking about sports.
We're talking about sports.
Talking sports.
Talking about sports. We're talking about sports on ADSN.
Talking about sports on ADSN.
Welcome back to Talking About Sports. Curfew time remaining here. Let's quickly go down the line for who's the best Carolina's player, the college player. Who does maybe the Charlotte Hornets draft? Who could be the best player of the bunch?
I think for the Hornets, I think one of these guys is going to fall in their lap. Harry Giles or Justin Jackson. I think that's going to be the pick.
I have Donovan Mitchell, the shooting guard out of Louisville. Just a guy that's going to need some scoring punch. I think he'd be a good guy for that.
Hornets are 18th in the league last year in three-point shooting. They did not have one player that shot over 40% from three. There was one player in the draft that led the ACC in scoring and shot 44% from three, Luke Kennard. That's the guy.
Okay. JT, you stole my thunder, but that's why you're the head of our stats bureau. I like Luke Kennard or Harry Giles if he falls to the Hornets. We had an interesting opportunity to go out to benefit a local charity, the William Wilson Foundation that promotes domestic violence awareness. William Wilson, the clother. He clothes professional athletes, Hollywood celebrities. Had an opportunity to take part in that. And then, without Mike Pacheco chiding me on my golf game, let's take a listen to what a very good friend of ours and a good humanitarian, William Wilson, had to say and what he's up to at the Clother Classic.
My name is William Wilson. I'm the founder of the William Wilson Charitable Foundation. We're ready to kick off the 2017 Clothier Classic at beautiful Carolina Lakes in South Carolina. We're gonna raise some money, have some fun, hopefully not donate too many golf balls to the gods. It's to raise scholarship money for Domestic Violence Survivor Scholarship. To be able to provide scholarship money to either go to college, a trade school, a certification program, because not everyone's a matriculating type person. Oh, I got hit another. That can't be it. I lost it. It was either really, really good or it was horrible. Well, you told me to hit that magnificent drive because, so I like to show my skills. I try to play at least one shot with every group, show my appreciation for them coming out here and having a good time. Oh, there you go. I say 4 tweets for some free ribs. I think all tournament hosts should get a driver.
I'm a huge advocate for this cause within itself. And then, put on top of that, he's a great friend.
I tell you what, William Wilson, he puts on a great show every year. And it was a great time, good friends, and, all for a good cause. So we all had a blast out here today.
He's done a lot of good things in the community. I've had a couple suits made by him that look good on me and get nice compliments. So why not take a day to come out and support him on a beautiful golf course?
All of us have been touched, whether it's in our own homes or we know somebody, we know someone who knows someone. So it's a cause that I believe in, and he's a good dude. And good folks come to this tournament, so we just have a good time.
Jay was nice, man. I saw Jay on that par 3. Jay was pretty nice. He's been out here every year. He's only missed 2 tournaments, so he's been out here 6 times. When I started this tournament, I wanted to be able to have an event that wasn't just about what do we get from it. So here I'm bringing in guys from Hollywood, guys from Sports Center, and guys from the fashion industry. They're bringing in iconic people in all different areas so you can appeal to different people.
Got to meet William, and a really good guy, really good opportunity to come help raise some funds to fight against domestic violence, domestic abuse.
William's a good friend, and I was excited to come out here and support everything he's doing, for charity and stuff like that. So we had a great day. We played pretty good, and I look forward to coming back next year.
Oh, went pretty well. Had a good time.
That's always nice.
That's when you know you balling, when you get photobombed by a legend like Jay Harris. That's when you know you're in the right place.
Well, we've talked a lot about Kevin's golf game, and so you don't have to rely on our word. You can see for yourself exactly what transpired at William Wilson's tournament.
Brevin Knight, man, crushing all that good Memphis barbecue he's eating all during the year. Just killing it. Oh, that's killing it. My partner, Jamar Nesbitt here, great NFL player. He got us in chipping distance. I think we can still get a par. You're not feeling my pain, man.
Don't injure himself anymore, so we keep him to more of the short shots, and then he's the guy that gets us going on putting because he putts first, so we know what the line looks like.
Rev straight on. Was it my shirt? Or is it just too tight around the stomach? That's what it is. 150 yards, Jamar Nesbitt. 4 off the house over there. He hit the house over to the right. After hitting the nice guy's house and blaming me off the drive, now he's going to try to putt and give us a birdie here on this hole here. I think it's short.
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about Kevin's game here. We got to work on that in-between game, and things will be all right. But I can tell you this much, no shortage of comedy while you're out there.
If I had a house on the golf course, I'd be playing more. Oh. And then somebody came in and started talking. I'm going to have to make a Skyline chili call to the bullpen here for relief. I think I contributed even though they didn't use any of my shots, but I think I'm here to provide support to keep the guys loose.
Train wreck. Kevin, train wreck.
That's a Jacques Cousteau shot because we're going to have to hire Jacques Cousteau to come go deep sea diving and get my ball.
No, I'm just joking. Kev, that's my boy. That's my buddy. Keven Casey, man, he's probably 270 pounds and it's all hard. He's just a good dude. Golf game could use a whole lot of work though.
He pulled through for a few shots, had a couple nice chips here and there, and the last drive, hey, we could have played it.
There we go. Best drive of the day. I'll take that. I'll take that. Best drive of the day, man.
And the good thing is Kevin never sliced at all during those. Maybe hooked a few, but didn't slice them.
I did both. I did them all. I topped many a ball. That's why I sometimes get a bad back when it's the second shot. I'll tee you off, and I'll like the chip and putt. But that second shot, I'm not as good as you, Mike. Nor do I have good enough clubs.
Did you get that hat from Judge Schmelz?
Well, I do.
How'd that happen?
I did get a bowl of soup with that hat, as you pointed out, Mike.
Hey, and you also got to hang out with the actor from All Eyes on Me.
Dominic Santana. Yeah, great guy from who plays Suge Knight in the movie All Eyes on Me.
Did a good job.
He did, yeah. He's a great guy from Fayetteville. Realized as we talked to him that maybe sports wasn't his venue for success. He realized that at an age that going to Hollywood, he had a good look. He's he had the acting skills, and he's learning along the way as he moves through with his Hollywood career, because I think this is one of his big breaks. I think he's going to continue to move forward. Dominic Santana is through Hollywood. And we want to thank William Wilson, Mike, for all the great work that he did, raising awareness to domestic violence and prevention. And he did, I'll say all these great things about him.
Yes.
A good friend, William Wilson. And yet he takes every opportunity he gets to give me cheap shots, hits me out of bounds, hits me low, below the belt, related to my golf game. But he's always taken maybe deserved, Mike, but they're still cheap to me, shots at my golf game.
Well, it's a dual-edged charity. He's raising money for charity, but he's also charitable for having you participate.
I provide comic relief. I keep everybody loose. I'm a good clubhouse guy. All right, well, we've our executive producer, Kevin Tolbert, obviously doctoring some footage here.
I don't know. That's eye in the sky don't lie, man.
I've heard that. I mean, I had a bad back. I still do. I don't have good clubs.
My arm. I broke my arm.
Bad equipment. Locust. Blame it on the equipment.
Yeah, it's an equipment failure. Okay.
I do have. I got to work on that equipment. Just want to say thanks, guys. John Tobias, our stats guy, Mike Pacheco, Reggie Walker. I had a great time. It's our inaugural edition of Talking About Sports here on ADSN. Give us a like on Facebook and Twitter. We're everywhere. It's our debut show, and we don't want it to be the last. Help us, help you. Support us. JT, final word?
It was a great show. Glad to be a part of it. I think you guys are awesome. Let's keep it going.
It's fun. It's been a good time right now. Of course, we're getting into the sports Armageddon when it's just gonna be baseball. So we'll have plenty to talk about as we get ready for football season coming up.
Mike, you couldn't have said it any better. All I got to say is it football season yet?
Well, there you go. For John Tobias, Mike Pacheco, Reggie Walker, I'm Keven Casey. For Kevin Tolbert, saying so long for now.